Brennan, we need to talk about
the account. Yeah, I know there's been some confusion with the deposits. I've been meaning to reconcile that with
$61,000.
Tyler James Brennan kept his own records of every dollar those families paid toward their kids' Guatemala trip. Those records are now Exhibit A, and the gap between what he told parents and what actually hit the bank account is why he's being arrested right now.
Brennan, we need to talk about
the account. Yeah, I know there's been some confusion with the deposits. I've been meaning to reconcile that with
$61,000.
55 families, $61,000, 60 teenagers who thought they were going to Guatemala. That was the gap between the spreadsheet Tyler Brennan handed parents on Sunday mornings and the bank statement he could not control. Within 48 hours of the church's forensic accountant opening that gap, he would resign. Within 90 days, he would be in handcuffs outside his own apartment in Round Rock. The mission trip he had founded, promoted, and personally led for 5 summers would never leave the ground without him. Quick question. Have you ever trusted a church, a coach, a teacher, anyone in your kid's life with money you couldn't quite track? Drop a comment and tell me how that worked out. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. We cover one of these every week, and they all start the same way, with somebody nobody thought to double check. Tyler James Brennan was born on October 14, 1990, at Seton Medical Center in Austin, Texas, the second of 3 children to Mark and Lisa Brennan. His father was a residential framing contractor who ran a 4-man crew across the northern suburbs of Austin. His mother taught 4th grade at a small Christian school off Gaddis School Road. The family lived in a beige 3-bedroom in a subdivision called Settlers Park, the kind of mid-1990s tract neighborhood where every house had a basketball hoop in the driveway and the same Bermuda grass in the front yard. Brennan's parents were active members of Cornerstone Hill Church from the time it was a single converted warehouse campus off Interstate 35. His earliest church memory, according to a 2019 staff bio later scrubbed from the church website, was sitting cross-legged on the floor of a portable trailer Sunday school while a college-aged volunteer played guitar. By the time Brennan was 12, he was attending the very same youth ministry he would one day lead. He attended Round Rock High School, graduated in 2009, played wide receiver on the freshman football team before quitting to focus on the church's worship band. Friends and classmates remembered him as charismatic in a low-key way, easy laugh, decent guitar, the kind of kid who could lead a small group prayer at 15 without looking awkward. He worked summers framing houses with his father, learned to read a tape measure before he learned to drive, and saved most of his earnings in a small green ledger his mother gave him for his 16th birthday. He enrolled at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, in the fall of 2009, declaring a major in youth ministry through the School of Divinity. He stayed 4 years, graduated in May 2013 with a 3.4 grade point average, and returned home to Round Rock that same summer. His first job out of college was as a part-time youth ministry assistant at a smaller church in Pflugerville, where he was paid $14 an hour and given a desk in what had previously been a janitor's closet. He stayed there 3.5 years, learned how to plan a retreat for 30 kids on a $6,000 budget, and developed the habit of writing every student's name and birthday in a black moleskin notebook he carried in his back pocket. In January 2017, the senior associate pastor at Cornerstone Hill called him personally. Cornerstone had grown, 2 campuses, weekly attendance over 4,000, expanding to 6,500 within the next 18 months. The youth ministry, which had cycled through 3 different leaders in 5 years, needed an intern who actually understood the local kids. Brennan was 26, single, lived in a 1-bedroom apartment off Sunrise Road, and said yes the same afternoon. His starting salary was $32,500. His annual performance review that first year, signed by Executive Pastor David Ngo, described him as engaged, scripture literate, naturally relational with students, occasionally overcommitted to side projects. By 2018, he was running the middle school program independently. By 2019, he had taken over the high school program from a youth pastor who left for a church in Tennessee. In June 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, Brennan was promoted to the full-time youth pastor position at 29 years old. His salary climbed to $58,400. He married his college girlfriend, Hannah Reeves, the following spring at a vineyard outside Driftwood. The wedding photos from that day showed him in a slim charcoal suit, no tie, grinning at his bride against a backdrop of wildflowers and string lights. To the parents of Cornerstone Hill, Brennan was the answer to a long-running problem. He showed up at Round Rock and Stony Point football games on Friday nights with his hood up against the December cold, knew the kids' names, knew their grades, knew when a freshman was being bullied in the cafeteria 3 weeks before the parents did. He started a Tuesday morning prayer group at a Starbucks off Louisiana Boulevard, where any teen could text him and he would meet them before first period. He launched the annual Guatemala mission trip in the summer of 2021, 60 teens, a partnership with a small orphanage outside Antigua, 2 weeks of construction work and vacation Bible school. The first trip cost roughly $1,650 per student. By 2024, the price had climbed to $1,950. It was a real trip. The work was real. The relationships were real. The kids came back changed. 5 summers in a row, Brennan personally led that group through customs at Austin Bergstrom International with a bullhorn and a clipboard and a homemade tracking spreadsheet on his laptop. Parents loved him. Senior leadership loved him. The teens loved him. He had become, in 5 short years, the single most trusted adult in the lives of 400 suburban families. And it was that trust, built carefully, plank by plank, the same way his father had taught him to build a house, that he would eventually spend. To understand what Brennan did, you have to understand how money moved through Cornerstone Hill Church. Cornerstone was a large operation. Weekly attendance hovered around 6,500 across 2 campuses. Annual giving exceeded $11 million. The church employed 42 full-time staff, ran a daycare, owned the 8-acre property outright, and had a 5-member elder board that signed off on the annual budget. The general operating fund, the account that paid salaries, utilities, mortgage on the second campus, missionary support, and curriculum, was locked down. 2 signatures required on any check over $500. Quarterly external audits. Monthly reconciliation reviewed by the executive pastor and the elder treasurer. A receipts policy that required every staff expenditure to be coded, scanned, and approved within 72 hours. That was the general fund. The designated funds were a different story. A designated fund is money given by donors for a specific purpose: a building campaign, a hurricane relief offering, a youth ministry trip. Most churches, including Cornerstone, treated designated funds as the responsibility of whichever staff member ran that ministry. The student ministry had its own bank account. Brennan was the only signatory. He had administrator-level access to the online giving portal for any donation marked student ministry or mission trip. He collected the cash payments families brought to Wednesday night programming. He collected the checks, made out to Cornerstone Hill Church with Guatemala 2025, written in the memo line. He recorded each payment in his own spreadsheet, which he shared with the parents. He deposited the money. He reconciled the account. He prepared the trip budget. He approved the trip expenses. Every single point of contact between a family's money and the trip's bank account ran through one man. That was not unusual. Churches across the country operate this way, and Cornerstone's structure was, by the standards of suburban megachurches, neither sloppy nor unusual. The elders trusted Brennan because they had watched him for 7 years. The executive pastor trusted him because the trips ran on time, the budgets balanced, and the parents wrote thank you notes. Trust in a church is not an accident. It is the entire operating system. The institution runs on the assumption that the people inside it are who they say they are. The vulnerability was not technical. The vulnerability was human. The general fund was guarded because the elders had once been burned by an embezzlement decades earlier, and they had built dual signature controls around the money that paid their own salaries. They had not built those controls around the money that paid for their children's mission trips. That was the gap. That was the door. And Tyler Brennan, beginning in January of 2024, walked through it. The first sportsbook deposit hit Brennan's personal checking account on January 11th, 2024. It was small, $250 transferred from his Capital One personal account to a mobile gambling platform called DraftKings, then a $200 wager on a college basketball game between Kansas and Iowa State. He lost. 2 days later, another $250 deposit, another loss. By the end of January, Brennan had lost approximately $1,800 of his own money. It was an amount he could survive. He did not survive it cleanly. Bank records would later show that Brennan, who had carried no consumer debt going into the new year, ran his credit card up to $7,400 between January and the end of February, trying to chase the losses. He stopped contributing to his retirement account. He canceled the family's planned spring vacation to Big Bend, citing a busy ministry season. The mission trip payment window opened on March 1st, 2024. Brennan sent a mass email to the parents of 230 middle and high schoolers in the student ministry, inviting them to register for the 2025 Guatemala trip. The cost was $1,950 per student, payable in 4 installments over 12 months, with the first $400 due at registration. Families could pay by cash, check, or through the church's online giving portal. 61 teens registered within the first 10 days. The first cash payment Brennan diverted came in on March 14, 2024. A father from a family in Hutto handed him an envelope at a Wednesday night service with $400 in cash inside, taped shut, his son's name written in marker on the outside. Brennan logged the payment on his spreadsheet as received. He did not deposit it into the student ministry account. 3 days later, on March 17th, he transferred $400 from his personal Capital One account to FanDuel Sportsbook and placed parlay bets on Saturday's college basketball slate. He lost all of them. The mechanism, once it started, was simple. Cash was the easiest to move. Cash payments left no paper trail outside Brennan's own spreadsheet. A family handed him an envelope on Wednesday night. He marked them paid in green on the spreadsheet. The cash never touched the church bank account. By the end of April, he had diverted approximately $4,200 in cash. Checks were harder, but not impossible. Brennan would receive a check made out to Cornerstone Hill Church for the trip. He would record the payment in his spreadsheet. He would then deposit a portion of the checks into the legitimate youth account, enough to keep the account showing forward momentum, and hold others in a desk drawer for weeks before either depositing them or returning them and asking the family to repay in cash, citing a filing error. A handful of times, he deposited a check into the youth account, then withdrew the cash equivalent from the same account on the same day, citing trip supply purchases in a fake receipts log he kept on his work computer. The online giving portal was the most difficult to manipulate. Online payments hit the youth account directly and could not be intercepted, but Brennan had administrator access. He could not redirect the money itself, but he could shift its designation, recoding a $400 deposit that had come in tagged Guatemala 2025 to instead read General Student Ministry, and then, in a separate transaction, transferring an equivalent amount out of the Student Ministry's general operating subaccount as a reimbursement for an undocumented expense. This was riskier, slower, and required falsified receipts. He used it sparingly, only when he needed cover for a gap. By June of 2024, 3 months in, Brennan had diverted approximately $11,800. He had lost approximately $11,200. He was, in his own private math, $600 underwater on the church's money. He believed, in the way every gambler eventually believes, that he was going to catch up. He believed he was going to win it back. He believed he would replace the money before anyone noticed. He did not catch up. The summer of 2024, when the previous year's Guatemala trip departed under his leadership, 60 kids, 2 weeks, a flawless trip that produced glowing parent reviews, and a follow-up Sunday morning testimony service that brought the congregation to tears, coincided with the worst 3 weeks of gambling losses of his life. He bet on the Euro Cup. He bet on the College World Series. He bet on the NBA Finals. He lost approximately $14,000 over 21 days. Most of that money came from the very mission trip account whose kids were, that same month, telling the congregation how God had used the trip to change them. By September, he had diverted approximately $27,000. By December, approximately $43,000. He started using a Louisiana riverboat casino off Interstate 10 near Lake Charles, driving 3 hours each way on his day off, returning home at 3 in the morning to sleep, 4 hours before Wednesday night services. His wife later told investigators she thought he was attending a men's accountability group out of town. The pattern in the bank records was the same every time. A deposit from a check or a cash drop would appear in his personal checking. Within 48 hours, sometimes within the same business day, a transfer of nearly the same amount would leave for DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, or Caesar Sportsbook. 41 separate transfers over 14 months. He never won a single weekly net positive. By January 2025, with the trip 5 months out, Brennan had diverted approximately $58,000 and lost approximately $61,000, meaning he was running ahead of his own diversions by stripping his savings, his retirement, and a personal line of credit he had quietly opened against his car. The mission trip's actual youth account on January 31st, 2025, held just under $9,000. The spreadsheet he was sharing with parents on that same day showed approximately $73,500 in collected payments. The gap was $44,000 and growing. He made his next move. He used some of his personal credit, money he did not have, on a line he could not repay, to put down the deposit on the airfare hold with the group travel company. He paid the lodging deposit for the orphanage compound. He paid a Guatemalan ground partner a small advance to begin coordinating logistics. The mission trip continued, externally, to look like a mission trip. The parents continued to receive cheerful Sunday morning updates from the youth pastor. The students continued to fundraise, car washes in the church parking lot, bake sales at the Saturday farmers market on Baghdad Avenue, an envelope-by-envelope sponsorship drive where teens asked their grandparents to help close the gap. Every dollar a teenager raised, washing a Subaru in a Texas February, went into a system designed to disguise the fact that the money for the trip no longer existed. That was the cruelest part of the operation. Not the theft itself, the performance. The unraveling began with a tax receipt. Stephanie Vargas was a single mother in Round Rock who worked as a dental hygienist and had 2 daughters in the Cornerstone Hill Youth Ministry. Her older daughter, Sophia, was 17, a high school junior, and had been part of the Guatemala mission trip every summer since the program started. The 2025 trip would be her 5th. Stephanie had paid the full $1,950 in cash, a number she had budgeted carefully across 9 months, in envelopes labeled by month, the way her own mother had taught her. On March 4th, 2025, with the trip 11 weeks out, Stephanie sent an email to the church's business office. She was preparing her tax return. She wanted an itemized receipt confirming her contribution to the church's designated mission fund for the calendar year 2024. The request was routine. The business office processed dozens of these requests every March. The administrator who pulled the records found nothing, not less than expected, nothing. There was no record of any payment from Stephanie Vargas in the youth account for the 2025 trip. She replied to Stephanie's email asking for clarification. Stephanie called the church the next morning. She was upset but composed. She had paid in cash, in person, to Pastor Tyler. She had a copy of his spreadsheet, emailed to her on January 8th, that listed Sophia Vargas in green as paid in full, $1,950, with a date of November 2024. The business office administrator forwarded both documents, the spreadsheet and the bank records, to the church's executive pastor, David Ngo. Ngo had worked with Brennan for 8 years. He had personally hired him, personally promoted him, personally pinned him with a small lapel cross at his ordination dinner in 2020. Ngo read the spreadsheet. He read the bank record. He read both again. He picked up the phone and called the elder treasurer. By the end of that day, the administrator had cross-checked 5 other families. 3 of the 5 had paid in cash. None of those 3 cash payments were in the bank account. 2 had paid by check. Both of those checks had been deposited, but the timing was strange. Both held for nearly 3 weeks before clearing. The spreadsheet in every case showed every family paid in full. Ngo did not confront Brennan that night. He took a step that, in retrospect, saved the church from losing the rest of the money. On the morning of March 6th, he revoked Brennan's signatory access to the youth account through the bank, citing a routine ministry policy update, and told the bank manager to flag any attempt by Brennan to access the account. He did not tell Brennan. He told only the elder treasurer and the elder board chairman. Then he engaged a forensic accountant in Austin, a firm the church had used twice before for general fund audits, and asked them to begin reconstructing the trip's true intake from scratch. The accountant, a woman named Patricia Howell, with 23 years of forensic experience, asked for everything: the online giving portal records, the cash log, the check log, Brennan's spreadsheet, the youth account statements, family payment receipts. She asked the church to quietly contact each of the 55 enrolled families and ask them, by phone, to provide their personal payment records, canceled checks, online giving receipts, bank statements showing the cash withdrawal date, The pretext was a routine reconciliation in preparation for the trip's final budget. 49 families responded within 72 hours. The picture that emerged was unmistakable. Families had paid. The money was not in the account. Brennan had moved it somewhere else. The forensic reconstruction took 11 days. Patricia Howell built a master spreadsheet of her own, a column for each family, rows for every payment they reported making, dates, amounts, payment method, the corresponding entry on Brennan's spreadsheet, and the corresponding entry, if any, in the youth account bank record. The pattern was clinical and consistent. Every online payment was accounted for in the youth account. Every check payment was accounted for, though many had been delayed in their deposit. Every cash payment, with 3 exceptions out of 41 cash transactions, was missing. Howell calculated the gap at $61,400. The shortfall in the general student ministry account, separate from the trip fund, drained through falsified expense reports and unsupported transfers, added another $12,900. The total documented loss to the church came to $74,300. She then asked the church to allow her to subpoena Brennan's personal banking records as part of the criminal referral. The Williamson County Sheriff's Office, contacted by NGO on March 17th, accepted the case and obtained the records within 10 days. What investigators found removed any remaining ambiguity. Brennan's personal Capital One checking account showed 41 cash deposits over a 14-month period, most of them at the same Frost Bank branch on University Boulevard, where Brennan had been a customer for 9 years. The deposits ranged from $200 to $1,950. The pattern was specific. A deposit would appear typically on a Thursday morning following a Wednesday night student ministry program. Within 24 to 72 hours, a transfer of nearly the identical amount would leave the account, addressed to one of 4 destinations: DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, or Caesars Sportsbook. A separate review of his credit card statements showed 11 hotel stays at the L'Auberge Casino Resort in Lake Charles, Louisiana, between February 2024 and February 2025, each booked on weekday nights and each accompanied by a $400 to $1,200 charge to L'Auberge Cage, the casino's cashier. The smoking gun, when investigators laid the case out for the district attorney, was not any one document. It was 2 documents placed side by side. The first was Brennan's parent-facing payment spreadsheet, the one he had emailed in January to every family in the trip. 60 student names down the left column, 4 payment installments across the top. 47 of those 60 rows ended in a green highlighted cell labeled "Paid in Full," with a total of $1,950. Stephanie Vargas's daughter, Sophia. 46 other teenagers. All of them green, all of them ready. The second document was the youth account's bank statement for the same period. The total of all 2025 trip-designated deposits in that account was approximately $42,800. The total Brennan spreadsheet showed as collected was approximately $103,800. The gap was the $61,000 investigators had been chasing, and between those 2 pages, in the case file, sat the third document, Brennan's personal account, showing every dollar of that gap arriving in his hands and leaving for a sportsbook within hours. The detective leading the case, a 16-year veteran of the Williamson County Sheriff's Office named Mark Albright, told the executive pastor at the close of the investigation, "I have worked church-related theft cases for most of my career," he said. "I have never seen one this clean. It is 41 transactions, and the math works on every single one of them." The arrest warrant was signed on April 4th, 2025. It was held for 5 days while the sheriff's office coordinated with the district attorney's office on the timing of the arrest. Brennan, during those 5 days, taught a Wednesday night lesson on the Book of Romans, met with the parents of an incoming freshman about volunteer leadership, and led a Saturday morning prayer gathering at the church. He had no idea what was coming. On Tuesday, April 8th, his attorney would later say, Brennan received a call from the church requesting his presence at a meeting the following morning with the executive pastor and the elder board chair. He told his wife it was probably about budget season. He spent that evening at home, watched 2 episodes of a streaming show with her, and went to bed at 10:42 at night. He never made it to the meeting. At 6:48 on the morning of Wednesday, April 9th, 2025, 2 unmarked sedans pulled into the assigned parking row of the apartment complex on Sunrise Road, where Brennan had been living since his marriage. 3 Williamson County Sheriff's deputies in plain clothes stepped out. Detective Albright, in a Navy windbreaker with the sheriff's office insignia on the chest, walked to the front door and knocked. Brennan opened the door in athletic shorts and a Cornerstone Hill t-shirt. He had a coffee in his right hand. His wife was in the kitchen behind him, pouring cereal. Tyler Brennan? I'm Detective Mark Albright with the Williamson County Sheriff's Office. I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of aggregated theft and misapplication of fiduciary property. Step outside, please, and turn around. Wait. What? There's been a mistake. I'm supposed to be at a meeting at the church in 2 hours. Sir, coffee on the table, hands behind your back. We can talk in the car. I don't understand. Is this about the trip? I can fix it. I was going to fix it before the trip. I just need to talk to David. Sir, the executive pastor is the one who reported this to us. He doesn't want to talk to you right now. His wife appeared in the doorway holding the cereal box, her face going white. Brennan turned toward her, his coffee still in his hand. Hannah, call my dad. Tell him to call. I don't know who to. Sir, set the coffee down. He set the coffee down on the small entryway table next to a wooden bowl of car keys. His hand was shaking. He turned around and put his hands behind his back. The cuffs went on at 6:51 in the morning, 3 minutes from the moment the deputy knocked. He did not say another word until he was seated in the back of the sedan. As the second deputy got into the driver's seat, Brennan, his head pressed back against the headrest, his eyes closed, spoke quietly to the windshield. I want to call my attorney. That was the last statement he would make to law enforcement without counsel present. The interrogation room at the Williamson County Jail later that morning produced 14 minutes of recorded video in which Brennan, sitting across from Detective Albright with his attorney beside him, declined to answer every substantive question. He did not deny the theft. He did not admit it. He stared at the table. The arrest hit local press within 2 hours. By Wednesday afternoon, the Austin American-Statesman had a story up. By Thursday morning, the story had been picked up nationally. Cornerstone Hill's senior pastor, a man named Greg Halverson, addressed the congregation on Sunday morning, April 13th, with a written statement that confirmed Brennan's resignation, confirmed the criminal charges, and apologized to the families. He read the names of the trip, 60 teenagers, and announced that the church had decided to fund the trip in full from the general operating fund. The Guatemala mission trip departed in late June with all 60 students aboard. Brennan was not there. The grand jury indicted on May 12, 2025. The charges were 2 counts: aggregated theft under Texas Penal Code, Section 31. IJO 3 in the $30,000 to $150,000 range, a third-degree felony, and misapplication of fiduciary property under Texas Penal Code Section 32. 45. Reflecting his position of trust over designated funds. Both counts carried maximum sentences of 10 years. We're at the part of the story where everyone has already paid. The families paid in cash, the teenagers paid in car wash hours, the church paid in trust, and Tyler Brennan is paying slowly for the rest of his working life. If you've made it this far and this kind of accountability matters to you, subscribe. These are the stories that don't get the coverage they deserve. We do this every single week. Brennan was represented by a defense attorney out of Austin named Robert Crenshaw, a former assistant district attorney with a quiet specialty in white-collar plea negotiations. The strategy was clear from the first hearing. Brennan would plead guilty. He would offer full restitution, financed through a second mortgage on the home he and Hannah owned, plus a personal loan from his parents, plus a payment plan secured against any future income. He would enroll, immediately and voluntarily, in a court-approved gambling addiction treatment program. He would ask the court for deferred adjudication probation in lieu of prison. The pivotal element of the defense was the church itself. The senior leadership of Cornerstone Hill, after weeks of internal discussion, decided to submit a formal statement to the court supporting restitution over incarceration. The statement, signed by Senior Pastor Halverson and the elder board, acknowledged the harm Brennan had caused, the breach of trust, and the betrayal of the families. It also stated that the church believed accountability and recovery, in this case, would be better served by long-term probation, intensive treatment, and a binding restitution order than by sending Brennan to a Texas state prison. The statement made clear that this was the church's institutional position. It did not bind the families. Several families filed their own victim impact statements, taking a different view. Stephanie Vargas was one of them. Her statement, read aloud in court on November 6, 2025, did not ask for prison. It asked for something specific. "My daughter Sophia trusted Pastor Tyler with her faith," she said. "I trusted him with our money. We are not asking the court for revenge. We are asking the court to make sure that Mr. Brennan never again has a position where a teenager hands him cash and a spreadsheet hides where it goes. Whatever this court decides about his freedom, please do not let his next chapter include any youth, anywhere, ever again. The cost of that mistake is too high." The plea hearing was held in Williamson County District Court in Georgetown, Texas, in front of Judge Eleanor Mackey, a 16-year veteran of the bench. Brennan, in a charcoal suit and a thin black tie, entered guilty pleas to both counts. His allocution was brief. He said he had developed a gambling problem he did not understand. He said he had lied to his wife, his parents, his church, and the families of his students. He said he was profoundly sorry. He wept on the record for 34 seconds. Judge Mackey delivered her sentencing statement before pronouncing the sentence. "Mr. Brennan," she said, "you stood in front of teenagers every week and told them that the most important relationship in their lives was one built on trust. You then betrayed the trust of those same teenagers and their families in the most cynical way I have read in any case before this court. You did not steal in a moment of weakness. You stole 41 separate times over 14 months, while continuing to organize the very trip you were quietly defunding. You let those children fundraise, in your name, for a trip you were stealing from. That is the part of this case I have struggled with most. I have read the church's request. I have read the family's statements. I am imposing the sentence I believe will most effectively secure full restitution to the people you stole from, while protecting any child from ever again being placed in the position those 60 students were placed in. But understand this: the absence of a prison cell in this sentence is not a finding of innocence. It is a finding that the people you harmed asked me, with their voices and with their willingness to be repaid, for a different path. You are walking that path because of their grace, not yours. The sentence was pronounced: 8 years of deferred adjudication probation. Restitution in the full amount of $74,300, payable in monthly installments with no balloon at the end, secured against any future earnings and against the home. 320 hours of community service, none of it to be served in a ministry or youth-serving context. A lifetime bar on any unsupervised handling of funds in any nonprofit, religious, or charitable organization. A lifetime bar on any employment, paid or volunteer, in any youth ministry, youth program, summer camp, school, or coaching role. Court-supervised enrollment in a gambling addiction recovery program with quarterly compliance reports. Any violation of any condition would convert the deferred adjudication to a full felony adjudication and an immediate prison sentence of up to 10 years. Brennan, as of the sentencing date, was working as a framing apprentice on his father's construction crew. He had returned to the trade he had learned as a teenager, swinging a hammer on residential builds across the same northern suburbs of Austin where he had grown up. His wife had remained in the marriage. They had moved out of the apartment on Sunrise Road and into a smaller rental in Hutto. He had attended every Gamblers Anonymous meeting on his court-ordered schedule. He had not, according to his probation officer's first compliance report, missed a single restitution payment. The mission trip that summer, the one he founded, the one he had spent 14 months stealing from, went to Guatemala without him. 60 teenagers, 2 weeks at the orphanage outside Antigua, the same paint, the same buckets, the same volcanic mountains in the distance. Sofia Vargas was on the trip. Her younger sister was too. The church paid for both of them out of the general operating fund. Stephanie Vargas waited at the Austin Bergstrom International Arrival Gate the night they came home with a hand-painted welcome sign she had stayed up the night before making. What no one in that courtroom said out loud, but everyone in the church understood, was that the institutional failure was as plain as the personal one. Cornerstone Hill had locked its general fund behind dual signatures because decades earlier it had been burned. It had not locked its student ministries fund because no one had imagined a youth pastor would steal from teenagers. The new policy, implemented within 60 days of Brennan's arrest, required 2 signatures on every designated fund disbursement above $200, quarterly reconciliation of every ministry account by an independent treasurer, and a prohibition on any single staff member maintaining sole administrative access to any online giving channel. The policy was named internally after no one, but every staff member who arrived at the church after April 2025 was trained on it in their first week. Stephanie Vargas got her tax receipt. It came 11 months after she first asked for it. It came from the church, not from Brennan, and it reflected the actual amount she had paid in cash. Every dollar she had set aside, in envelopes, across 9 months of dental hygiene shifts. The receipt was correct. The trip her daughter went on was real. The teenager who came home from Antigua in late June with a sunburned face and a sketchbook full of children's portraits was the same daughter she had sent. The only person missing from the entire picture was the youth pastor who had once stood in the lobby on Wednesday nights collecting envelopes. He had founded the trip. He had run it 5 times. He had built the relationship with the orphanage, the partnership with the ground team, the spreadsheet that tracked every payment, the slide decks that recruited each new class of students. He had built it carefully, plank by plank, the way his father had taught him to build a house. And then, over 14 months, he had quietly burned every plank for fuel. The church kept the trip. The teenagers kept their summer. The families kept the receipts. Brennan kept the probation, the restitution schedule, the framing apprenticeship, the marriage, the gambler's anonymous chair on Tuesday nights, and a lifetime bar on ever standing in front of anyone's child again. That was the sentence. That was the case. That was the gap between two spreadsheets, one in green, one in black, and the man who lived in it for 14 months until someone finally looked. This case was quiet, but the case on the right-hand side of your screen is louder, uglier, and far harder to walk away from. Click it now.